The Ford Escape and Hyundai Tucson are some of America's best-selling crossovers. Both now offer large amounts of technology that 5 years ago you'd be paying over $50,000 for. Now you can get a well-equipped family SUV for a decent price. In fact, this Ford Escape MSRP'd for around $31,000 and this Tucson around $26,000. Let's see how they stack up against each other.
Alrighty, now moving on to the exterior of the Hyundai Tucson, let's start with the front. You do get a bunch of chrome bits, and I do like all the chrome accents on the outside, and I think the LED headlights look pretty cool as well, and I'll flash up a video of those. You do get fog lights and LED running lights down here at the bottom, which also complement the LED headlights in the regular headlights and the main headlights. They do end up creating this kind of triangle shape when they are both on at the same time, and I'll show you. It does look pretty cool. Hyundai has started to do things like that make their cars more special, and I think it gives the brand more of an appearance and really makes the cars noticeable out in public. The grille also has a really cool design in it that has these triangles that go up and down that I think look really nice as well. So moving on to the side of the Tucson, you get chrome door handles, and you also get a body color painted mirror on the outside. I also think these rims on the side of the Hyundai look pretty good as well, and they make it look a little more sporty for being a crossover SUV. They do give the car a nice sporty look. You get a chrome accent going around under the windows on the doors. I think that looks really nice as well too. Alrighty, now moving on to the rear of the Tucson. For the rear window, it has this slope, which I really like to it. In fact, I like this slope a lot and how they did it, because it makes the car look more streamlined, but they did it without making the car lose headroom in the rear seats. That kind of was just taken up by the cargo room. You also have these chrome exhaust pipes, which are real and they do look pretty good. Alrighty, moving on to the front of the Ford Escape. You'll see that you have some chrome accents going around the grille, and you have a black grille, and I'm indifferent on which one I like more. The front of these cars both look good. I do like the more angular styling of the front of the Escape a little more, and I also like the headlights a little more on the Escape as well. All right, moving on to the side of the Escape, you'll see that you have those SEL rims on this Escape. I do like the SEL rims more than I actually like the titanium rims on the titanium trim level of the Escape. And that's just because they look more sporty, and the other ones which just look like plain alloy wheels that you would get on like an SE model. Another thing is you have painted mirror caps and door handles. If you don't upgrade to the SE, this door handle will be molded in color, a black plastic. It just won't look as nice as this looks on here. You also get more chrome accents going around the windows on the side of the Escape as well, just like on the Tucson. And moving on to the rear of the Escape, I like the taillights more on the Escape. I like their LED look and how they're more angular than they are on the Tucson. I also like the fact that the exhaust pipes on this one, they are dual, but they are split up, unlike on the Tucson, but I like the look of the Tucson exhaust pipes more, the design of them. For the window up here, kind of like the design on the Tucson as well, a very sloped looking roofline, when in reality it's not really sloped. It's just because they use black trim here to make it look like it's sloped to make the SUV seem more streamlined. I also like how they have Escape spelled out in large letters on the tailgate of the car too. Today is literally the worst day to film this review. It is incredibly windy out. Alrighty, moving on to the interior of the Tucson. Let's start with, again, what's in front of us as the driver. You have your steering wheel, which the steering wheel is pretty intuitive to use and has a bunch of features on it as well, including setting your infotainment settings for the radio. And of course, you have the standard stuff like setting your cruise control and volume and things like that. Believe it or not, I've seen cars before where you don't actually have volume controls on the steering wheel. I prefer them on the steering wheel. Some cars have them on the back of the steering wheel where you keep your hands at 9 and 3. I just prefer having a little joystick or buttons that you can use with your thumb. You have the gauge cluster. Now, Hyundai in the Tucson at this time wasn't offering a digital gauge cluster in it, but you do get a little screen in the middle that shows a diagram of the car, whether the windows are open. You can control some of the safety features through the infotainment screen. And you just control that basically by using these dials on the steering wheel to go through things. You could change your lane keep assist settings, your driver assistant settings, and then go into a gauge mode where you can see fuel economy, your trip info, and your speed. Moving over to the left side of the steering wheel, these are kind of driver controls. You have a blind spot monitoring system on and off button. You have a lane keep assist button, traction control button, and then you have a electric tailgate opener button over here to open the tailgate. And of course, on the right side of the steering wheel, You have your push to start button, and then let's move on to the center control stack, and this is kind of where the Tucson kind of shines in some of the technology it has for the price it has. This MSRP'd for about $25,600, which is a lot cheaper than that Escape was, and the Tucson offers a lot for its price, which is basically what these crossovers are competing to do now, considering there's so many of them and they're so popular. Now I will say that the Escape does get some points when it comes to interior styling. I like the style of the interior of the Escape more, but for features, I believe the Hyundai does kind of have a one-up over the Escape in some sections, and let's go over it. Now, I do like Sync 3 more than Hyundai's infotainment system, but Hyundai's infotainment system is just as intuitive. You have all the buttons you want for your radio and media, your track selection, then you have buttons for your home phone and for setting up your infotainment system. And then again, simple dials for volume controls and tuner controls. So moving down to the climate controls, this has dual zone climate control, so does the Escape. Heated seats and heated steering wheel, just like the Escape does. And moving under that, you have two 12-volt sockets that are 180 watts. And then you have an aux port, a USB Type A port, which is pretty handy in situations like this. And then below that, you also have a Qi wireless phone charger. Moving back towards us, you have your gear selector, which is just standard. It feels nice. It feels leather wrapped. I'm sure it's polyurethane, but it does feel nice. And then under that, you have your parking brake. Now, here's something interesting. Under the parking brake, you have your drive modes, your auto hold, and your camera view. Those two things, auto hold and camera view, are pretty normal, but your drive modes, the Escape has 5 drive modes, I believe. This only has 1, and that is sport mode. So why not just label the button sport? Why label it drive mode like there's multiple drive modes? It just doesn't make sense. Hyundai decided to do it that way. And moving on to practicality, you have your center console here, which is just one compartment. It is a pretty large size center console. And then moving on to your glove box. Your glove box is a pretty decent size too. Now, as for quality of materials in this car and comfort, I actually think, and I don't say this much about Hyundai products because I've driven a Hyundai before and I'm not the biggest fan, but it actually feels very high quality in here. And this is the limited trim, so this is high up there, and this feels really, really good. The center console is covered in this nice soft touch material. The seats are very nice feeling and very soft leather. The dashboard and the upper dashboard are still covered in soft touch material, along with the upper door trim. When you move down is when you start to run into some plastics, but what you're mainly touching and looking at, very nice material. As for the sound system, you get an Infinity sound system. I've never heard of the brand. Usually in cars you get Bose, you get Bang & Olufsen, you get Harman Kardon, you get Burmester high-end surround. I've never heard of Infinity. I have been listening to the radio in this car when driving it. It's not my favorite stereo system in the world. It's okay, especially for the price of the car being $25,600. I think what this car offers for that is it's pretty good value. So let's just hop into the back seats and see if the back seats provide that same amount of value. Alrighty, sitting in the back seat, and I have to say, wow, I'm honestly truly impressed with this car. It's not like the materials back here are the best. You do get climate vents, which I like. For a crossover, you don't always see climate vents. And then below that, you have a USB Type A port, which is nice for your rear seat passengers, though a 12-volt socket would probably be better, or 2 USB Type A ports. Because there's going to be multiple people back here sat at a time, most likely, you want to be able to have the option for multiple people to charge their phones. So I would have probably rather seen a 12-volt socket, but a USB Type A works. I just wish there was 2 of them. You get rear seat cargo nets for storage on both seats, and the legroom back here and the headroom is really surprising. Honestly, I'm really impressed with the amount of room they've given their passengers in the car, but that's got to be sacrificed somewhere, so we'll see. Anyways, for armrest, you do have an armrest that's leather wrapped with 2 cup holders in here as well, and then you have some door bins for storage. Alrighty, now moving on to the interior of the Escape. Now this is a bit different. The way the Tucson was laid out, it was this kind of was up more, and it felt like you were encompassed more. The Escape kind of feels more open up front than the Tucson does, but I will say the Tucson, that feeling is a little more comforting than the way this is. But I digress, let's move on. Starting with the gauge cluster, you get a larger center screen in the Escape that's mounted horizontally instead of vertically.
And this one actually has color on it, and you can go through a bunch of menus like your driver assist, your fuel economy. Some of that stuff you could go through in the Tucson as well, but I think the Escape has more options. As for your dials, just like the Tucson, you have your tachometer, your speedometer. Moving on to the steering wheel, both are decent. I'm very indifferent on which one looks better. They both look fine to me. The leather on the Tucsons did feel a little nicer because it was a smoother leather, but the seats in the Escape do feel more comfortable and plusher than the Tucson. So, I think there's trade-offs for both of them. And as for controls, you have your controls for your volume, your cruise control, and settings and everything like that. Now, this one does not have adaptive cruise control, and the other one didn't have adaptive cruise control either. As for your lane keeping assist settings, just like in the Tucson, you do get the lane keeping assist on the turn signal stalk on the left. All right, moving into the center, and to be honest with you, I like how this is set up more than I like how it is in the Tucson. Though the Tucson did have dual zone climate control, and this one doesn't. And remember, this is $31,000 new. The Tucson was only $25,000 new. The Tucson had dual zone climate control. This one does not, but you do get heated seats and you get a heated steering wheel. But I do like how it has more of a simplistic look to it. As for your radio controls and everything like that, you have them up here very simply laid out. And I do like how they set the infotainment screen up when it comes to this. It looks cleaner and more put together than on the Tucson. But again, they're both basically the same kind of features that you would get in each infotainment system. But I do like Sync 3 more than the Tucsons. It just looks more put together. It is easier to use, and it's laid out just better and more ergonomically. Now, moving on down here, you have your gear selector. Instead of having a lever that you would pull back and forth, you do have a turn dial for park, reverse, neutral, drive, and low. Below that is your parking brake, and below that is your auto hold, and then below that is your sport modes, or your drive modes. Now, unlike the Tucson, this has more than one drive mode. You actually have 5. You have normal, eco, sport, slippery, and then deep snow and sand. So you do get more drive modes, and actually having a drive mode button there makes sense. Now, as for center console space, you do open it. You have a decently sized center console and a USB Type-C port. And as for glove box space, that's pretty decently sized as well. Now, as for materials on the Escape, the seats and the center console are very nice feeling, though you do run into some cheaper plastics right here on the side around the climate controls. The Tucson did have a leather material that went around that was it was smooth looking leather, and it looked a lot cleaner. You do have soft touch material around the climate vents here, but I do like the way the Tucson looked a little more. As for the door panel, you do get some soft touch materials and then a nice comfortable armrest. And this just has the Ford standard audio system. It doesn't have anything like the Bang & Olufsen system, which you can get in this car, but the Tucson did have an upgraded audio system. All right, now moving on to the rear of the Escape, I will say there is a lot of room back here. You do get a large amount of knee room and a decent amount of headroom as well. Now, what's weird is, and I don't like this when automakers do this, you don't get a backseat pocket on the driver's side, but you do get it on the passenger side. Now, as for comfort back here as well, the seats are very comfortable, and they even recline back and forth. And you can actually move them forward and backwards as well, which is really nice. You couldn't do that in the Tucson. You also get climate vents back here, and below that, which I said this was something I didn't like in the Tucson, in the back of the Escape you get a 12-volt socket, so you can add more USB ports if you have a cigarette lighter adapter for USB ports. That's the only reason I liked this more than the straight up USB port, just because you can add more accessories using the 12-volt socket. As for the materials back here, the seats are nice and comfortable, but the door is basically all plastic except for the leather armrest right here. And as for the center armrest, you do get 2 cup holders, and it is wrapped in a nice leather material as well. All right, moving on to the rear of the Hyundai Tucson, you get 31 cubic feet of cargo space, and I believe 69 cubic feet of cargo space when you have the rear seats down. It does provide some good practicality. I love the way they did the cargo cover back here. You just pull it out, slot it into these slots, and let it go, and
instantly does, and if you want to just let it go, you just pull it out and let it go back in. Some cars are complicated where you have to take the entire thing out if you don't want it in. This just is literally a roll away cargo cover, which I really like about it. As for sitting in it, if you were a person just wanting to goof around, you do get plenty of space, that's for sure. Now, one thing that does bug me though is when you come to, let's say, open the tailgate or walk into it, you would literally, like, I'm tall enough where I would bump my head on the top of the tailgate lifting up. I wish they would have let it go up a little farther. Alrighty, now as for the cargo area of the Escape, you get up to 37.5 cubic feet of cargo room in the back, and with the seats down, you get about 65.5 cubic feet of cargo room in the back. Now, I will say I liked the load cover on the Tucson more, but I do like the wide open space that the Escape offers. The Escape holds a decent amount of cargo for its size. Really, it's not as much as some competitors, but that's due to the fact that you get a lot of rear seat leg room in the back, which is something that the Escape is known for and has been known for this generation. But the cargo space is fine and offers plenty of space for anyone trying to buy this segment of vehicle. All right, now moving on to the engine of the Hyundai Tucson. This is a 2.4 liter inline four, making 181 horsepower at 6,000 RPMs and 175 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPMs. Now, this is where the Escape gets the upper hand, is even with that inline 3, it does make more power and it makes definitely more torque at a lower RPMs, and I believe it is faster from 0 to 60. Though this engine isn't as powerful, it does feel really smooth and mated to the 6-speed automatic transmission that it's mated to. I do think the transmission and the engine do pair well together to provide a pretty decent driving experience. All right, the wind is too strong for me to be able to put the camera on a tripod, so here are the specs of the 1.5 liter 3-cylinder EcoBoost engine for this Escape. Makes 181 horsepower at 6,000 RPMs and 190 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 RPMs. And it's made it to an 8-speed automatic transmission that goes out to an all-wheel drive system. It gives this car a pretty nice pep to it that I think the Tucson is missing with its 2.4 liter that's naturally aspirated, and the fact that this is all-wheel drive gives it a definite head start off the line. All right, so driving the Hyundai Tucson Limited. Now, I will say it actually drives pretty nice. Road noise is as to be expected, though. That's the first thing I notice with these small SUVs, is how much road noise there is. And that's kind of expected for how little of a price you're actually paying for these cars. It's only $25,600 new is what this was, and that is incredibly cheap. I'm going to clear the air here and give some of my reasoning behind why I'm choosing a 2020 Escape versus a 2019 Hyundai. The 2020 didn't change for the Tucson, so it's in a sense almost comparing a 2020 to a 2020. In 2019, Ford clearly had the underhand and didn't make the car that was the better option. But now, if you look at the 2020 Tucson and the 2020 Escape, they are on equal ground, and the 2020 Tucson is not much different than the 2019 Tucson. So that's my reasoning behind that. So now that we're up to highway speeds, I will say I got there without any issue. 65 miles an hour is not hard to achieve in a car like this, and you're not going to be going fast in a car like this. So 65 miles an hour, perfectly fine, no issues, got up to highway speed pretty quickly. This is the front-wheel drive variant of this car as well. It's not the all-wheel drive. So the front-wheel drive system, if you're not looking for faster, this does well. It also doesn't feel like it's underpowered compared to the Escape. The Escape definitely feels faster, but it doesn't make that much more horsepower. In fact, the Escape makes the same amount of horsepower, but makes more torque at a lower RPM too. So this doesn't feel underpowered at all. This feels normal for its range and it's for its class of vehicle. So no problem with how this drives. Now, some of the safety features on this car for $25,000 is pretty good. So blind spot assist, that's pretty standard when it comes to cars nowadays, and especially in 2020, 2021, you're starting to see that become standard on a lot of crossovers because they're trying to aim the crossover market at, younger buyers with younger families who want safety and everything like that. And you also have cross traffic alert. In fact, this for a $25,000 car, and this is really surprising to me because the Escape is 31 brand new. The Escape doesn't have a 360-degree camera. This has a 360-degree camera, though the camera for the backup camera is a lot lower quality than the Escape's is. this provides a pretty good bang for your buck. And as for comfort, suspension is nice. It's not wafty and bouncy like an F-150 or an Expedition, but the materials are nice to touch. The seats are pretty comfortable. This suspension is it's crossover SUV suspension. Nothing special. Alrighty, so driving the Ford Escape SEL, I like this car, and I like its powertrain. 1.5 liter 3-cylinder connected to an 8-speed auto, and it's turbocharged. Now, the fact that it's that tiny little engine that's turbocharged, it's not as smooth as that 2.4 liter inline 4 at all, but it definitely is faster than that 2.4 liter inline 4. It makes the same amount of horsepower, but it makes 15 pound-feet more of torque. And that torque is also made lower in the rev range than on the Tucson, and it feels much quicker. As for the driving feel, the steering is light. It's a crossover SUV. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not terrible. The ride quality and comfort is pretty decent. I do notice this one feels a little more bumpy than the Tucson does. The fact that the seats are more comfortable than the Tucson makes this a nicer car to ride in. And I will say the same thing that I said about the Tucson. The road noise for crossovers is just horrendous, and it's the one thing I dislike about them. And I'm not talking about luxury crossovers like a Range Rover Evo. It sounds like an entry-level crossover when it comes to road noise and tire noise. You can hear everything that's going on the outside of the car. As for equipment, when it comes to the Escape, I think it's a little light when it comes to comparing it with the Tucson. The one thing that it's missing that the Tucson has, and that really bothers me, is the 360-degree camera that the Tucson has. Now, I will admit the camera on the Escape is much better, much higher quality, but $6,000 more, I think that's where Hyundai wins this battle, is technology and equipment for such a low price. $25,600 was the MSRP. Well, this one sits just above $31,000. Not that this is light on equipment at all. It's not. Definitely not light on equipment. But the Tucson is doing something that a lot of Japanese and South Korean cars are doing, and that's providing technology at such a low price level. I mean, adaptive cruise control is standard on something like a Toyota RAV4. And a 360-degree camera with lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring and everything like that on a $25,000 Hyundai Tucson is just crazy. They're both excellent crossovers. It's just the Tucson just has some equipment that the Escape doesn't have, and the Tucson is $6,000 cheaper. And $6,000 at this price level makes a big difference in the decision process of buying a car at this price level. Now, as for power, let's see if we can put that 181 horsepower to use. The Escape actually has 5 drive modes, not just one that they decided to call a drive mode. In the Tucson, they should have just labeled the drive mode button Sport. But the Escape has 5 drive modes, which I went over in the interior section. Sport, Normal, Slippery, Deep Snow and Sand, and Eco mode. Now we're going to put this in Sport mode. Livens up the throttle response. It's not terrible. Definitely faster than the Tucson is.
Both of these are great crossover SUVs capable of doing most tasks you throw at it. In the end, they both have advantages and disadvantages, but it comes down to this. The Escape is a better car if you're looking for more comfortable seating and a car with a better user interface, because Hyundai's infotainment system really isn't a match for Sync 3. On top of that, the Escape offers a more powerful powertrain and a simpler yet stylish interior design. Yet the Tucson may edge out the Escape. This is due to the extreme amounts of value that the Tucson offers. Never in my life have I seen a car go for $26,000 and have a 360-degree camera system, even though the backup camera is absolutely horrendous. I truly love the Escape, and if you're looking for some of the things I listed, then it might be right for you. But if you're looking for the value, the Tucson may be your best bet. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you want to see more from us, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video.